Hey everyone, Evan Kirstel here today at a fascinating topic on security. We're talking about security from a developer standpoint, how to get developers to get their code secure and moving along the pipeline. Steve Wilson, CPO at Contrast Security. Steve, how are you?
Excellent. Thanks for having me on, Evan.
Well, thanks for being here. As someone who used to develop some code like 2 decades ago, I have an interest in this topic still. Would love an introduction to your mission at Contrast Security and maybe a little bit about yourself as well.
Excellent. So yeah, Contrast Security is a company that is focused on helping large-scale development teams build more secure applications. And we sit in a field called easily enough application security, but our focus is really on doing this a different way where we actually insert our sensors inside the application so we can
Mm,
watch all the data flows rather than trying to analyze source code, which is an impossible problem. So we can help really find those important vulnerabilities and help developers fix them. From my perspective, I lead the product and engineering teams here. I've been at Contrast for about 2.5 years after stints at bigger companies like Citrix, Oracle, and Sun Microsystems. Way
mhm.
back in the day, I was an early member of the Java team at Sun.
Oh, some great war stories there, I assume. So that would
Oh
be
yeah.
interesting. So give us a snapshot of state of the art, pre this DevSecOps approach to application security and today with cutting edge approaches. How is the delivery, model methodology improved, or is
Yeah.
improving?
Well, I mean, I'll give you a real life example
Mm,
that happened to me before I got here. Is I was um, leading a large development team at my previous employer, and the company had some public security incidents. So they gave some more funding to the security team to get some new tools to help them analyze the code and make it more secure. Um, what then happened to me is the VP of engineering came to me one day and said, "Steve, I need to cancel the roadmap next quarter." And when I asked him which feature, he said all of them, because the security team just ran a scan on our code base and filed 1,000 tickets for security flaws in the code.
oh my gosh, what a day.
And I said,
Yeah.
well, that can't be right. And of course, what we did is we spent the next 90 days sifting through all of them, and almost all of it was junk. And
Wow.
at the time, I thought, wow, we must have some really poor security people at the company. And what I came to realize later is it was pretty par for the course with the tools that people have been trying to use, which weren't designed for agile development, cloud development. They were simply trying to scan source code, find vulnerabilities. And those are tools that were actually great tools in their day, but they were designed for dedicated security researchers who are going to be looking at a code base over a long period of time, following these threads, nailing them down and trying to find problems. And today in an agile environment where you're deploying multiple times a day, you can't run that scan once a quarter or once a year. It's impossible, and you're just going to slow everything down. And so the approach today is that you build it right into your pipelines. What Contrast does is basically you don't have to scan your source code. We turn all of your functional tests into security tests. We just need to see the code run. We can watch the data flows, and we can find the places where data can get from one place in your app to another place in your app that it's not supposed to get, and give your developers a really clear breakdown of what the problem is and how to fix it.
Amazing. So I smell something that sounds like AI here when you talk about this approach. Is that my suspicion, or are you using machine
Actually,
intelligence here?
the interesting thing is, so Contrast is a company that's about 8 years old. And for
Mm,
most of Contrast's history, it was built without anything that would resemble artificial intelligence. It turns out the rules for building secure applications are simple enough, and people take training classes in them and all of that.
mm,
The problem is humans are not good at following that kind of reasoning, right? When you need to think about, well, the code's going to flow from here to here and through different parts of the application, and I need to make sure that something doesn't get from here to here. It's actually something that standard algorithms are good at figuring out if they can watch the
Mm.
flows. So our rules are straightforward. It's our approach is different where, if you know tools from a um, performance analysis perspective, things like App Dynamics and New Relic, we use the same basic technologies where we instrument the bytecodes, and we can do that at a really high performance rate. But instead of looking at performance, we look at security. And so it just allows us to look at it differently. So it's simple rules applied in a much different way. But going forward, security and AI are going to be a super hot topic.
Yeah, I think so. Look at all the code development tools out there. Gosh knows what they're building upon, copilots, et cetera. And how do you ensure the integrity of that? It's going to be really fun topic. So
Yeah,
you guess you have this unified approach. That means sort of bringing the development teams together with, the security folks. Is that
absolutely. Right.
that's kind of herding cats, is it not? How do you bring those folks together?
That's the win-win, because for a long time it was that model that I described where the security team runs a scan and throws problems over the wall.
Hmm.
In recent years, there's been this pivot back that people call shift left application security, where the development teams are saying, I'm so tired of being abused by the security team. I'm going to go buy my own security tools and I'll just run them. And that leads to a whole different set of problems, right? Those teams are generally not trained, nor are they incented to actually do a great job at security and centrally manage these things. And this is in an environment where security gets more and more important every day. In a world after SolarWinds and Log4j, we're now getting more and more government regulation that says
Hmm.
your code needs to be secure. It's almost like the shift that happened with Sarbanes-Oxley, where people had to start to attest to the security of their infrastructure because it meant that your financials were
Yeah,
at risk otherwise.
finally, hallelujah.
Now, basically, you're having to attest to the security of your applications. And that's what's
Wow.
coming starting this year. And it's really causing people to step back and think about, how am I going to approach this differently? Because now, as a CISO, I'm going to have to attest to the fact that I am using state-of-the-art development practices and security practices in my apps.
Wow, that is quite a sea change. So tell us, does Contrast integrate security across not just the software life cycle, but it does it go beyond, into supply chain and the ongoing development cycle?
Yeah, so supply chain security is a really interesting space. And, again, it's things like SolarWinds and Log4j that have really
Hmm.
shined a big light on that. The thing happening right now that is the buzzword du jour is the software bill of materials, or the
Hmm.
SBOM as it's called. And it's basically, think about it as like a nutrition label for your software, where at least somebody buying your software or maybe using your SaaS service knows what's in there. What open
Hmm.
source components are in there? Where did they come from? What's the provenance on those? And so one of the things that Contrast helps you do is generate a really accurate SBOM where we can see your application running. We know exactly what's in there, what's running, what versions they are there known vulnerabilities in these different pieces of code? So we can help you do that and then bridge that into your overall software supply chain story.
Very cool, very timely. Wow, that's fascinating. And you've gotten a lot of recognition. I see on your website here, you're a high performer in the G2 Spring Gartner, Enterprise Grid Report. Congratulations. That's a
Thanks.
really meaningful thing. And I understand you're one of the fastest growing companies in North America, which is no small feat. So I imagine there's some challenges and opportunities there. Growth is a two-edged sword. How are you managing?
Yeah, well, some of these shifts that we talked about mean that there is more and more focus on the market that Contrast is in. So this is a fast growing market, and Contrast being a disruptor, our job is to come and change the way that people do these things so that they can get better results. And so that has led to some great growth over the past few years for us, and some exciting prospects in the future. Um, but from our own perspective, we're now in an environment where everybody is shifting how they're thinking about what success as a startup means. And a few years ago, it was growth at all costs. And now it's like growth and a path to profitability or what you need if you want to go public. And that's definitely the kind of thing that we're targeting in the future. And so what we're really working on is building a durable, profitable business that helps our customers deliver amazing results.
I love it. You even talk about here the white paper how to recession proof your application security program. I mean, these incidents and events now can bring companies, startups down, right? I mean, it's no small
Absolutely.
matter.
And when
Yeah.
when you think about it, we're in this environment where we're telling people, no, you need to go invest in more tooling and more process around this. At the same time, everybody's board is telling them spend less money on everything.
Mm.
And so one of the things that we can do, given the nature of our technology, is we actually can help you do more with less. And so one of our specialties is helping people understand how much are they spending, not just in hard dollars on these tools, but how much effort are they wasting? We've worked with companies where they tell me, yeah, sure, I use this tool from this particular vendor, some static scanning tool for my source code, and I pay X million dollars for it. And then you really get into it with them and you find out the total cost of ownership is way worse than that, because they have a department of 45 people that do nothing but review the findings from those tools and try to decide if they're real or
Mm.
useful before they give them to the developers. And so one of the things that we can do is we can help you bundle together multiple tools that we can replace your static analysis tool, your dynamic analysis tool. We can reduce your pen testing dependencies. Those are all hard dollars. But the other thing we can do is just make your security teams and your development teams just more efficient, make them faster.
Fantastic. Well, tell us a little bit about your journey. I mean, from Sun and Java in the early days of Sun to now. Any look back in your career with a view towards advice to the up and coming, kids? I call them kids
Um,
out there who are in tech or interested in tech and kind of rising up through the ranks. A lot of uncertainty and change and disruption. What a time, right, to be in our space.
yeah. Um, It is really interesting, and I don't know at what point I went from being the young guy to being the old guy giving the advice, but it happens at some point. And it was really telling early in my time here at Contrast. I realized there were people who work on our Java instrumentation engine who were not born when I started working on Java.
Wow, that's quite a
Um,
milestone. Yeah.
I note that Java had its 28th birthday this week. So
Wow.
happy birthday,
Wow.
JDK. But one of the things that I can tell you from a shift perspective, the way I actually got to Sun was believe it or not, I was doing an AI startup in 1992 to 1995. And we were doing some cool things, but then the web happened, and it felt like overnight everything changed. And we felt I got together with the guys. We 4-person startup. We got together and we said, are we doing the wrong thing here? Because frankly looked at these other companies going off and storming into the web, and we said, we don't understand this internet thing. So we have wrapped up the company, decided we better go get jobs where we could figure it out. And somehow I lucked into landing at the dot and .com as my introduction to the internet, where I got to figure out how the internet worked working on Java at Sun Microsystems. And we've gone through several of these iterations, whether it was the rise of the smartphone, the rise of cloud computing. All of these have been these major shifts. And as a developer, these are all new technologies that you're going to want to dive into and figure out. And the question is, how fast can you get yourself into these new technologies so you can be at the front of the wave?
Mm.
And, honestly, the one happening right now is generative AI, things like Chat GTP or GPT, and all of those things coming so fast. And frankly, this wave is happening faster than any of the other ones have in the past. The amount of time it took 10, 15 years, and people are still deciding, can I move all my workloads to the cloud? But AI, you can see the amount of excitement around it. We're bound to have a boom and a bust, but it's going to transform industries very, very quickly. And so for developers out there, I've really been encouraging people, go get your feet wet with it. It's actually fantastically fun to go in there and dabble with that at a coding level. If you are a developer today, you can dive in and learn the APIs and things on Open API really, really quickly and do some remarkable things.
And if you're even not a developer, what a time to experiment with low code and no code and code generation tools. And I mean, the stuff
Well,
that's available now is just incredible for the citizen style, developer.
I mean, one of the things I've been showing people is, Chat GPT is a no code development environment.
Right.
You just tell it what you want and you can have it go off, and basically you're just programming in English. It's just a whole different approach to it. And I sat down with somebody who was a financial manager who had the idea that he could use AI to do it, do parts of his job. And I basically sat down in an hour and showed him how to replace some of the people in his office so that he could do it himself. And it's just shocking how fast that can happen.
Yeah, no more working through hours of PowerPoint creation, by the way. You can download a script and have it create your PowerPoints, your Excel macros. I mean, fun stuff. So what are you looking forward to the next few months? We've got the summertime coming on, but you've got Black Hat and DEF CON and a lot of industry stuff happening. Anything in particular? Any travel coming up?
um, let's see. Well, from a personal perspective, I just got back from the Bahamas with a bunch of friends, which was fantastic.
Oh, that's fabulous.
And we just wrapped up the RSA show in San
Mhm.
Francisco, which is our big show, being an enterprise company rather than a sort of hacker company. So those things like Black Hat are fun, but they're not generally where our customers are. But they're good places
Right.
to learn things. Um, the things that we're looking at right now is we have a lot of exciting things coming out in our product set over the summer, things that we've been working on quite a while in terms of launching, where we're going to be expanding our language coverage, where today we cover probably the top 9 or 10 programming languages. But it's just shocking how many programming languages people are still working in. So we're going to be bringing out a new engine where we're going to be doubling the number of programming languages that we
Mm.
cover. We're expanding some of our capabilities where we can actually um, uh, basically reach into the code repositories like GitHub and help people with their security all the way before the code is, even built. And so looking at some new ways to do that. And, then from a real futures perspective, the other thing we are starting to look at is what are the security implications of all this AI stuff? And as people start to go off and build um, applications with things like large language models, turns out there's a whole new class of security vulnerabilities that developers need to be aware of and educated on.
Wow. Well, you have your work cut out for you. Well, thanks so much, Steve, for joining for the quick update. Really amazing work you're doing. And I hope folks reach out to you with questions. And thanks, folks, for watching. Really great to have this episode with Steve from Contrast Security. All right, Steve, thanks so much. Thanks for
Awesome.
watching,
Thanks, Evan.
everyone.
Appreciate it.
Take care.